Greetings once again, my friends on YouTube, to the Cleaner's Corner. This is our Back 4 Blood themed podcast, community-wise. It's been a few months since we did an episode. Welcome to episode 3, where it is going to be hosted by myself and Big D as always. But today we have a extremely special guest, none other than SwingPoynt himself. How's it going, my friend?
Hello, thanks for having me.
No, it's a pleasure.
I'm excited.
For real, I think ever since we knew from the start that we wanted to have guests on and, people within the community to come and chat, your name was not only the one that we were thinking of, but it is by far the most recommended. So to everyone in chat that's, said, get Swing on, Swing's here now. So it should be a good
we've
time.
heard that a million times too. That was like a million and one times after the first one. We're like, we're thinking about getting some guests on. It was just SwingPoynt all the way down.
But not without reason. I think it's definitely fair to say that, to kind of give you an intro, SwingPoynt is, I would say without a shadow of a doubt, the real face of Back 4 Blood content, right? Especially in the YouTube space, always on Twitch, whether it be like tutorial, how-to content, or just, positive streams and deep dives. Basically, if it's to do with the game on like an in-depth level, Swing has covered it and in good fashion. So thanks for joining us. I'm excited for today's episode, as of course, there is no coincidence that this is the time that we're recording this episode and getting it out there, because we are mere days away from the first huge content update coming to Back 4 Blood. It is going to be the Tunnels of Terror. You can see it in the corner right there. This is going to be the first gigantic expansion that we have seen in Back 4 Blood from launch. We were just saying before we started recording, it's crazy how the game's been out for like pretty much like half a year already, and we're now getting this. And I mean, Swing, start us off. What are you most looking forward to in this expansion?
Well, first, thank you for the very nice intro. I was blushing. Oh my goodness. and then, most excited is definitely going to be the new difficulty, because you play Nightmare all the time and we're looking for something new. So we are really excited, like in my group as a unit, to go ahead and try and take on the new thing. And then, on Reddit, they keep talking about little tidbits here and there. We learned a little bit about New Hope, so I'm really excited to see how it all plays out, how it all feels. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, I think there really is no time like the present to just dive in and start talking about it, right? The expansion itself, Tunnels of Terror. I'm going to quickly cut to our other scene here. Boom! Tunnels of Terror, expansion number 1, April the 12th. We're going to be seeing all this come out in one go, and what are we going to be getting? It is the 2 new cleaners, Charisse and Hang, new PvE activity in Ridden Hives, all new weapons, skins, all that good stuff. Cleaner skins, we've got some hazmat suits coming, new warped Ridden, and I don't think it says on this graphic, but like Swing was just saying, we are getting the new hardest difficulty. Is it No Hope or No Hope
Left?
Left?
Called No
Hope.
Those
lines? Yeah, so
No Hope.
No Hope, the new hardest mode. That is definitely what a lot of us have been excited for, especially the kind of like, vanilla Nightmare player base, I suppose. But I mean, there is so much to cover here, right? Like, right now, we are just talking like in vague terms before we get too specific. Is this about what we were expecting to see in this expansion? Is it kind of going beyond what we thought? Is it, is it not enough? I can't imagine we'll say that. What are we thinking?
I think it's actually a little bit more than what I was expecting, because we got the 2 cleaners that we kind of knew. I wasn't expecting the difficulty to drop with this, although I'm very happy it is. But in addition to all those, you have the new cards, which we knew there was going to be some, but there's probably way more than what they've already teased. And then I was not expecting like legendary weapons. Like that was something that it didn't really like kind of hit my mind. I was thinking, okay, we're going to get cleaners, we'll get cards, and maybe a couple new mutations here and there and call it a day. But then they added in all this other stuff now, legendary weapons, and the No Hope difficulty, which is honestly just what I'm going to be talking about the most. Because as we all know, as people that were, we were grinding Nightmare when the game first came out, when it was a battle, right? It was just like probably one of the hardest things that we've done as like a co-op gaming like enthusiast. But ever since they switched to Nightmare and now things got a little bit easier, we were kind of like, okay, well, when are we going to get that like fear every time, some horde comes out, when you really one mistake and you're just completely screwed. And that's what we're getting.
Well,
so that's
I'll tell you what I'm the most excited about that specifically, though, is kind of thinking back to when the game first came out and, we were all kind of looking at original Nightmare and learning the game in that sense. Because it wasn't just like learning the game like learning the difficulty, and that was it. We were still learning a lot about the game itself at the same time, but it was just hopping from stream to stream and YouTube video to YouTube video, and seeing how everyone was tackling certain points that were like consistently challenging for a lot of us, and kind of borrowing strategies here and there, discovering stuff yourself that other people will look at, and then they start implementing it, and maybe they optimize it and take it further. And from what it sounds like we might be getting from this new difficulty, I'm extremely looking forward to getting that element of it back.
Yeah, agreed too. Go ahead.
Right. Especially from the perspective of what there's going to be basically 7 new maps. And so much of what learning the game is learning where to go and when to do it and what to look out for on the maps, right? So if there's going to be 7 new dungeons, those are presumably 7 new opportunities of lots of different things to discover. And where should we go? Why should we go? Is there something happening that's going to give us a reason to go there? And I mean, I don't know how many maps there are in Back 4 Blood right now, but
in original there's like 30, I want to say 33, 34. I know it's in the mid 30s, I know for that much.
Right.
And then if this is 7 dungeons, I mean, that's a huge percentage just out of that 30. And then these might be all completely unique too. I know some of the maps kind of take the same geography and then just open different doors that go into different areas, but these might just all be completely different too. And they might be huge, they might not be, they might, it might vary a lot. They might use more verticality. There's a lot of different things that could be going on here. And I'm just excited to witness that and be a part of that.
Now let's talk about specifics, because don't get me wrong, we are going to be talking about this for a while today.
Yeah.
We have courtesy of the Back 4 Blood Twitter pages and social medias, we've been getting some nice graphics here and there, going into specifics about what we're going to be getting in this expansion. Now, to start off with, we do have. Oh, I am actually looking at the wrong one. There we go. I'm a really good production assistant. There we go. Boom. Heng and Charisse. These are the 2 cleaners that we're getting now. New cleaners might not sound like much on face value when it's like, oh, well, it could be getting whole new maps or whole new cards or all these new things. New cleaners is like whole playstyles opening up, right? Like there might be cards that were terrible before, or maybe they didn't have a purpose that could fit new ones. And I kind of feel like that's an element of what we're going to get here. So let's start with Charisse. Who is going to be one of the big body kind of characters in the game. Armor pieces shot off ridden have a chance to become armor plates. 25% trauma resistance. The team effect is 25% team bolstered health. The fire axe as a melee weapon, so the starting weapon, the fire axe. And consumable armor plates grant a buff that will spawn with Charisse in game. So this sounds like not only we're getting a new cleaner, but some pretty much new mechanics, right? Yeah, whole new mechanics alongside. What are we thinking here? Start off, D.
Okay, so at the beginning, I was one of those guys like, oh, cleaners are cool, like extra cleaners. I'm still sticking with, Carly and Papa Hoffman. But then when I saw the Charisse one and that first one that says armor pieces shot off ridden have a chance to become armor plates, I looked at that and I was like, wait a second. So that means they're going to implement some kind of armor mechanic, whereas if you get that corruption card, it may actually be beneficial if you guys know how to deal with, armor tall boys the correct way or whatever the case is. My concern is that I'm wondering if the armor plates are just for Charisse or for everybody. That's the only thing I don't know. Like, is that a cleaner specific mechanic, or is that going to be everybody?
I got an idea. I think it's going, and I think there's a little bit of a clue with the graphic here. I believe the armor is going to be anybody can pick it up, because consumable armor plates that grant a buff will spawn with Charisse in game. So her being there might make the armor become a mechanic that everybody can use, is the way I look at it. So
now,
she's not the only one that can equip armor.
Is that mechanic going to happen regardless of whether or not Charisse is on your team?
That's what I'm thinking. It might be a Charisse thing. So Charisse, I'm not sure if this is going to be how it turns out, but I'm assuming Charisse needs to be on the team in order for armor to be a part of the game.
That is what I take from it. At least on on paper, at least it does sound like if you've got her, she then opens that up to be the case. Which, if that is true, I mean, already as it stands, I know it's hard for us to assume because the version we're playing now is not going to be the same game that we eventually play, in a week from now. But I think it's safe to say that right now damage resistance and tanky builds are kind of better than they've ever really been. So if we now have access to more health and armor, that is it going to be like the armor on the Ridden where it just nullifies damage to that part? Is it going to be like you just bolster some health? Is it going to be like a shield effect almost? Like this could take something that is already super powerful and make it even better.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but when we talk about some of the cards that they mentioned, we have that graphic for it coming up. There was one that was mentioning, where temporary health decays slower. So then you have this tankiness where the temp health stays with you longer, and then you add armor plates on top of that. I don't know if that sounds wild, actually.
And then bolstered health on top of that too, which is going to basically give you more temporary health capacity. So yeah, you guys are bringing it up in a way where it's like there's going to be a lot of opportunity to get really beefy, and maybe that's because they're going to throw a lot of things at you that take your beef away. I'm not really sure.
That's a good point. That's a good point. There are new enemies coming. Maybe the enemies have maybe they deactivate temp health. Maybe they stop it from being effective. Like it's hard to assume without knowing exactly what's going to change. Exactly, but it definitely sounds cool. On the other side, though, Heng is going to be a new, less tanky cleaner, but still bringing something new to the table. Senses and can ping nearby attachments, prepper stash doors, and hive entrances. When hit by a mutation, there is a chance that an item will fall out of his pockets. Team effects. 5% team accessory reuse chance, and his melee weapon is a hatchet. So I think for now, let's just ignore the starting weapons because it's not really the most important. But those other three all sound like, again, they're completely different to anything else that's going on. But it sounds like there's quite a lot of RNG, right? Like when you hit him, there's a chance an item will fall out. Now, is that a new item or is that an item he's holding will drop?
Yeah, I hope it's just a new item because
just drops a grenade.
I'm never using that.
Sounds like a debuff.
Hey, where's our toolkit?
I need to point out something. Okay, how many hours do you guys have in this game? There's a reason why I'm asking this. Roughly
a lot.
I think about 600.
A lot, right? We're gonna say at least 600 each, right? I can count on one hand how many times I actually call those rooms prepper stashes. It's never happened.
I am learning right now that that's what they're called.
I'm telling you, they are toolkit rooms. The fact that it's called a prepper stash makes zero sense to me, and my mind is kind of blown because I think I have like 700 hours in the game. I don't think I've ever called it that once.
And I still won't. I refuse. They're toolkit.
No, I'm not changing that now. But other than that, the items falling out of pockets, I wonder if it's like maybe just brand new items that maybe he hasn't even bought yet. And then that's just like it's a bonus for getting hit. But then it's like you want him to be a tank because then he's always getting hit. And then he's just dropping items left and right.
It's just like
I don't really know how that's going to work. It depends on how often that happens, I think.
I definitely, again, not to be overly negative, but he does sound like a cleaner that I don't think I would immediately want on the team. Because it's just a lot of RNG, right? If it's like 5% reuse accessory chance and a chance that an item will fall out of his pocket versus cleaners that have that, like for example, like literally right next to Charisse here, you take Charisse, you have the armor mechanic, you get the bolstered health, you get the trauma resistance. There's no ifs and buts about it. Versus Heng being, you could get unlucky and go entire levels without seeing his effects a single time, unless it's like RNG in your favor and the odds are good, so you pretty much are gonna see the value. But on paper, I don't know if I'm a believer in him. I will be honest.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to rely on something that isn't reliable, and I think it really depends how they make him work, right? So if it's, let's say it's tiers of percentages, it could be he takes 5 damage, then there's a 5% chance something's going to drop. If he takes 20 damage, there's a 20% something's going to drop. It could be anytime he gets hit by anything. So if it's a damage over time, if that would work, and each one of those little dots could be an opportunity for something to drop, then suddenly he sounds really awesome. It really just depends on which way they go with it. I think best case scenario is you could walk around in some that the wretch left everywhere, and you could just have items spawning left and right, or the stalker's choking you, and then as you're getting pulled, you're dropping items. But if that's not how it works, then what you think is, well, I don't want to get hit by a bruiser just for a chance for a toolkit because if you're trying to think of him as an economy character, you're wasting way more economy by getting smacked like that than you are by maybe gaining an item.
God,
So
imagine the
yeah.
trolling if you have like a hang on your team and he gets hit by a hawker and they're like, "Oh, break me out." He goes, "Nah, we need to see if you drop any items." And we just leave him there for like 10 seconds. It's the first thing I thought of. The
That's what I was
trolling that would
saying.
happen with that. I mean, but that's the thing, right? So right now there's a lot of ambiguity because we don't know exactly how that mechanic works. I have a feeling they're going to explain that getting closer towards the release, or maybe even like right after release, because it's a big question that needs to be answered. But right now it doesn't sound that good. But if it works where anytime he takes any source of damage, there's a chance, that's really good. And on
No,
top of that, I
no,
know
it's
we
actually
were
different.
talking
It's it
before.
has to be mutation. I was just about to say. So
Well,
they've
yeah,
specified that because can you imagine if it was any damage and friendly fire did it and your friends are just like punching you in the
that's
back of
just
the head
stupid.
to see what falls
But
out?
even more so, that bolsters what Swing was talking about. You know, like, oh, you could just stand and retch acid, you know, and then you'll get like a ton of. There would be a good opportunity to get weapons or the hawker because when you get hit by that projectile and you're stuck, you're taking damage from a mutation, you know. So
Scariest
there's a
stun
lot
gun.
to it.
That's
You can
true.
you
Yeah,
can
but
make the
that's
rules
the
at that
thing.
point.
They want him to stay in that, stunned state to get more items. If he's losing 5 health a second, he's just sitting there squirming, but pipe bombs are blowing up everywhere. I mean, that's a good thing. You want to be able to pick those up. So we're just going to leave Hang just kind of sitting there.
So
I don't know.
I think it definitely is one of those things where on paper alone, it's hard to know how good either of them are going to be. I think Charisse definitely sounds like the winner of the two of them at the moment. But again,
Mm.
we're only
I
just
agree, yeah.
given early thoughts. We could be revisiting this in a few weeks and being like, "Ha, do you remember when you said that Heng might not be good?" And then he ends up being like the best in the game because turns out he just drops the best version of everything, and he's dropping barbed
Yeah.
wire and med kits and
Oh,
pipe bombs
shit.
left
I
and
didn't
right.
even
Ooh,
think
that'd
about
be
that.
spicy. What if he dropped purple stuff? I
Yeah,
didn't
I
even think
didn't
about
even think
that.
about that. What if the quality is completely random? Okay, wait, that changes things. All right, fine.
Yeah, don't know about that.
Maybe Hang's pretty decent. We don't know.
I guess we will see. But for now, we do have access to a little bit of other information about stuff that's going to be coming out. And that's going to be 2 of the new weapons. Now, forgive me, I tried to fit them both into my graphics. I did it as best as I could. So we have the Damnation and the Tenderize. But the Damnation is going to be... Now, okay, I've got a question. This is literally just a modified AA-12. Do we think this is going to be the approach for a lot of new weapons? Because the Tenderizer is a whole new thing, right? It's a Warhammer with shotgun shells on the end of it. Like, are we thinking they're going to be modified existing weapons, new ones, or a mix of both?
I think it'll be a mix of both. I'm also not completely sold that this is an AA-12.
Yeah, I mean, it's like visually it's the same base, but it could literally just they could just
Yeah,
go for the effect of, oh, it's a modified thing, the cleaners got
yeah.
creative, and either way, I don't mind because if it's a incendiary shotgun, do we think it's going to be permanently incendiary, or are these going to be... Because when I see this, right, I see incendiary rounds ignite the target, and then the Tenderizer is it's a shotgun hammer, dismembers enemies upon impact, and deals explosive damage in a large area. I have a hunch that these might... A lot of these, like, kind of special weapons, I guess, or legendary weapons, if they're the red ones, I feel like they might be the kind of weapons, in Left 4 Dead, where you pick up the minigun and you use it until it's gone and then you drop it. And the
Mhm.
grenade launcher and chainsaw and stuff like that. They're not permanent weapons. You find them in the world, you keep them for a rainy day, you spend them, and they disappear. I kind of feel like if this is the kind of huge, like, real helpful thing they're going to do, I wonder if that's what these weapons are going to be like.
That's kind of a scary thought, though, because if you think, like, let's say it's only a limited amount of ammo, right? I mean, you can't hold 2 primary weapons unless you have the card. So that means you're dropping the weapon that you have tons of ammo for this that has very limited ammo,
In
and
Left
then
4
when you have
Dead,
to
you
drop
would
that,
just
then
pick it
what?
up. So you would have it as well as
Yeah.
everything else, and you would
Right.
just... When you swapped away from it, you drop it on the floor. So I'm just
I would
assuming
hope
that
that's
could
how
be
it
the
is.
approach.
Yeah, I would hope that's how it is.
I think okay, so first thing in terms of what's going to be, if these are skins or if these are different weapons entirely or yada yada, I think the graphic that they gave us on Tunnels of Terror, it shows the hammer in the bottom right. And initially
Mhm.
I thought those were a bunch of skins, the other weapons next to them, because they have an RPK, maybe that's a scar right there. They have a couple of different weapons right there. And I mean, yeah, maybe an M4. Initially I thought those were skins, but now that I have the context that the Tenderizer is not a skin and it's next to other weapons in that corner, I think those might all be legendary weapons.
That's
So
Could
I
be.
possible,
think
yeah.
I think we're going to get a lot of different legendary weapons that are mirrors of, like, for the example, the AA-12. And then something else that I think on the topic of ammo and if we drop things or if they're temporary, I'd be curious how they handle that because they alluded to you have to go into this tunnel in order to get this exclusive loot. So it's a very big commitment to go into one of those tunnels to dive for legendary weapons. It's because when I think of Left 4 Dead, you could just find them, right? You're just walking around.
Yeah,
Oh, here's a chainsaw.
some of them had like guaranteed world drops, but generally speaking, they were just like as far as I'm aware, just a low percent world drop rate that you could just get in levels at certain points.
Okay.
So I wonder if that is going to have anything to do. I mean, I guess these could be world drops too, but they haven't really touched on that as a possibility. It's always been going to the tunnels, get the stuff. So I'll be curious to see how they implement that. I'm leaning towards it's going to be you get a cool new weapon and you use your ammo pool. I don't know how they'll do it with the hammer though. Man, I don't know if that would use shotgun ammo. I'm really curious if Holly's going to say at least it doesn't run out of bullets. We'll
Imagine
see.
saying that and then it runs out of bullets. It's like, thanks, Ollie.
Yeah, that's actually crazy. That's false advertising.
Still though, I like the idea that it's not this obvious, oh, it's a new machine gun, it's a new shotgun. Like,
Right.
I like how it's something that's going to be more, because whenever we heard that there were more weapons getting added, like, don't get me wrong, I'm all for there being more, like, generic guns to just pick up and find. Like, I don't know, maybe, like, you know, again, like, I've always been a big fan of, like, maybe we'll get dual-wield pistols one day, and maybe they'll be doing, like, I don't know, a crossbow and stuff like that. So, as cool as that would be to find, the game has a lot of guns as is. There are a lot of weapons in just
Right.
about every category. I feel like of all the stuff that the game could benefit from getting new things, new standard just pick up and find weapons weren't really high on the list for me. So seeing that these weapons could be potentially more, and again, even if it's something that you find it in these, like, you know, quote unquote dungeons and then use them for however long you've got them for the rest of the new campaign, or if they end up making the new difficulty, like, you know, it gives you a huge benefit, but there's a huge risk to going to get them. It just sounds like a really interesting dynamic getting added to a game that, again, a lot of us have so much time in. It's just a way of getting those new experiences, right? Because it's all about replay value at the end of the day. And if this is the approach these weapons are going, I think that's definitely replay value in the right way.
Yeah, I agree with that. And we're not even getting into the corruption cards too, which could be insane.
Something to look at with the new weapons. If you have the damnation available, take a really close look at it. I bet you if you aim down sights with it, you see that little sight it has on it? I bet you that looks sick. If you go ahead and you aim down, doesn't that look like an angel or a devil or something like that? I bet you it looks cool.
Oh, you're right. It's like an imp.
Down. You're aiming down in between the wings of like that imp looking thing. That is pretty fucking wild.
Oh yeah, I'm zooming in on it now. It's like it literally looks like an imp from Doom almost.
Is that barbed wire on the front end?
Oh, that is so good.
That's
okay.
So, like, that's going to be a whole part of it that makes them feel more special, right? Like the cosmetic feel of it. Like, because I mean, if you have skins on your character, that's cool. But this is a first-person shooter, so how can you make that feel more cool? I mean, I guess gloves or charms, but if you just make the guns themselves have cool stuff on them like that, I think that's really awesome.
Imagine
it's a different reload animation or something.
Or deliberately, like, never taking a deck that gets rid of ADS. It's like, why would I want to get rid of the ADS? It looks cool.
Right.
That's really interesting. I didn't really notice the details of that.
That's a really good point, kind of to segue into, you're talking about legendary weapons, but legendary attachments are going to be a thing too. So how many categories are there? Yeah, so if you, in terms of disabling your ADS, maybe you don't want to, because there might be a legendary scope that pops up, and maybe there's not that many legendary attachments, but you got the scope, you want to be able to use it. And legendary attachments, in my mind, are almost as exciting, if not more exciting, than just the weapons, because you could, like, build a bear, workshop your own legendary weapon then, because you can just throw legendary attachments onto whatever you already had. So, and you have 4 attachment slots, so maybe you could have 4 legendary attachments, and you could have something that is absolutely scary, disgusting, and world-ending. Like, there's a lot of different things that could be going on with a part of the game that they're not even really talking about or advertising that much, but it says right there in tiny red text, legendary weapons and attachments.
But also the fact that, again, we're talking about how there are so many weapons in the game. That obviously goes hand in hand, as we're going to talk about some of these new cards in a moment as well, which obviously, you know, you can now pick and choose and, you know, take attachments off things and put them back on, whatever it is. But let's say you don't really care about a lot of the new weapons, and it's like, well, yeah, cool hammer with dynamite on it, whatever, that's cool, but I like my 357 Magnum just fine. Now you can take your favorite gun and put those potentially very good legendary attachments on them and get even more mileage out of a gun that is quote unquote unviable, make it viable because you've got that, you know, that help to it, right? Which again all comes down to that. I've got my favorite cleaner and my favorite guns. I want to use them without feeling like I'm throwing the game for the team. How can I do that? And boom, there's instantly is a way potentially.
And then speaking of that, I like how you're talking about attachments, because the next thing we were going to talk about was like the new cards that are coming out. We
Indeed.
finally get that card. It is called Weaponsmith, where you'll be able to rearrange your attachments that you find. Now there is a cost to it. It'll be, if you can stack this, but basically the idea is that it says it allows the ability to unbolt attachments from weapons outside of safe rooms. Unbolting attachments cost 400 copper, but for every instance on your team that has that card stacked, it reduces the cost by 100 copper. So at most, or you could only have to spend 100 copper per unbolting, which is really good if everyone on your team has that card, right?
Potentially, yeah. Especially if it's like something you all want, because the more you have it, the more mileage you'll get because you all have access to it a bit more. But I'm seeing. So I saw on Twitter about this card specifically. I don't know if it's just me being a little bit different here, but I'm going to go a little bit against the grain and say that I never really had a problem without being able to remove attachments. Not because I didn't think it was necessary, but I just never really found in myself minding because I was a bit more prone to like just swapping weapons or whatever it is. So what do we think specifically about the ability to, you know, to take attachments off and swap is going to be this huge benefit? Because I'm happy it can be done, but it wasn't something that I was super desperate to see. Again, I'm not sure if it's because the weapons I use, maybe they don't really need attachments to be good or whatever it is. But what is it about this card, do you think, that is going to make such a huge difference?
I'm going to be honest, man.
Yeah, go ahead,
ahead.
D.
Oh, no, please. I insist.
Well, I think it's one of those things where if we take a look at it in a box, you don't really get to see everything that it could do. And I think once we bring in the DLC, there's going to be a lot more scenarios to think about because, like we were just talking about legendary attachments, we're going to care a lot more about our attachments if they could do legendary things. And if they're going to be in the tunnels, we don't know if they're going to be deep into a tunnel, because the tunnels you might have to just go down and down and down and down. I think that's what people would assume a tunnel is going to be like. You'd go deep into it. So if you're going down, you might not be able to go back up to the safe room. And if you're in a situation where you found this weapon that has, like, let's say you find an M4, but it has a attachment on it that makes it so you can see through walls or something like that, right? Well, you're not probably going to want that M4, but if you already have a really stacked something else weapon, you might want to rip that off of there.
True.
And then Weaponsmith is going to let you do that on the fly. And if you didn't already have another attachment laying around on the ground, then you'd be SOL. And this is going to let you do that wherever you want. I think another thing people are going to do is just unbolt stuff in the safe room and then just have a permanently unbolted gun. And then it'll be like a mule weapon. So things like the deagle and the revolver are going to be really useful for that because they're a secondary that everybody can carry. But then just being able to swap things in and out whenever you want, kind of like how you do now, except it's just in your pocket. I think those are scenarios that are going to be really useful for that. And then especially at the beginning of an act, right, where you don't have attachments yet, if you want to unbolt a gun that you found rather than, because you can't do it in the safe room anymore, right? So if you found a weapon that might be really good to replace your Jim's M1A, then maybe that could be a scenario where doing it outside of the safe room is really useful.
Especially it does come with the the cost of being done, but assuming this element of the game doesn't change too much, I feel like we're definitely at a point that it's a lot of medics run copper, and even if it's not specifically medic, there's usually someone in the squad that has a lot of like bonuses to copper. So you know, if you're like halfway through an act, you're already getting to the point that you have a lot more copper than you know how to spend. This is a good way of still seeing value from that, and again, you know, it just gives you more reasons to do it. Because I definitely think that's something I would like to see changed, is that, you know, people ending acts with way too much copper, not because it's OP, but just because it's a little bit clumsy having that much and nothing to spend it on. So it's, you know, another way of using a mechanic that is already strong, but in a way that makes it a bit more sensible, I suppose. But I didn't think about it being like you're finding a bad gun with a good attachment, that you can pick up that gun, unbolt it, pick up your good gun, and then put it back on. So that definitely could be useful for sure.
Yeah.
Could be in
No,
that
there's use for that. And then me as the because I'm pretty much a sniper main. I enjoy sniping the most in that game. It's really annoying when you have like a Barrett, and in my case, I love the Phoenix the most. You have a Barrett that has, let's say it's a green Barrett, it's got like a 4 times on it, decent, right? But then you get the Phoenix that's green, but it has no scope on it. Now I can put that scope on. That's really the only thing that I always saw that was annoying playing sniper, was that I can't do that. But other than that, it was never really a big thing for me saying, oh man, I wish I could just take off this attachment. Like, you deal with it when it's not there. Like, if the option's not there, okay, you just deal with it. But I guess this is just a way to kind of like make it a little bit more customizable. And every playthrough can be even that much more different,
Well,
which is good.
there's also the obvious thing of picking up a good gun that has a red attachment on it, and you just want to get
And then
rid of
getting
it.
rid of it. Yeah.
Those are the
I
best
think
attachments. What are you talking about?
That's
Red
what
is
that's
really
that's what I
interesting.
thought for the first week. I was like, red? That's a new color. That must be
That's
really good.
legendary.
Oh, but no, that is just one of the cards they have talked about. As we do have, this is a card that I am extremely excited for. Bodyguard. When a teammate is within 5 meters of you as attacks, you will instead receive half of that damage, and this can trigger once every 3 seconds. Now, this is really good because, like we said right at the start, one of the stronger build types right now, or one of it is just strong in general, is damage resistance, temp health. Now, one of my favorite decks to play by far is the double shotgun tank. Like, that build is so fun. And it's also a build that got even better in the most recent kind of card change patch we saw about a month or so ago, where again, hordes are making you get more health, and taking a heavy hit makes you get 25% damage resist. Like, this deck was already really good, and then they added those cards, so now it's even better. Now having like an excessive amount of damage resistance, but being able to take that damage instead of your teammates, we're now talking that tanking is so much more than just hoping the enemies go for you or standing in a position that they will have to hit you first. You now just being near your teammates is going to make you fill that role better, because they don't even have to focus you now. If they hit a teammate and you're nearby, you'll take a bunch of it away. And I think that just, again, it's the card system overall, it's so good at making you treat it like almost like an RPG and making a class out of your deck. This is the kind of card that really pushes that dynamic, right? Let's say you want to go for the whole, paladin, aggro taking, whatever it is. You might not be able to pull aggro like in like a traditional RPG, but this is going to still make you, have that role. And that to me sounds really exciting. And even if you're doing melee, right? You're just doing melee damage resist. This is going to be even better because you're just going to be standing near enemies, and if you're near an ally and you're just like chopping around and they're nearby and if they get slapped, like you're going to find value out of this card without even meaning to find value. And that sounds really cool for me.
It's so funny because, like, I love how excited you are for this card. I'm the complete opposite. I'm a selfish sniper. I'm never going to be within 5 meters of you, so I could care less about that card. But the one card that I do like is Pumped Up. That's a huge one. I know Swing, you probably have a lot to say about this, but the temp health decaying 20% slower, and then more pain med spawning than 5% health. That might be, now obviously this isn't the only new cards that we're going to see. There's going to be way more. That's the strongest out of the 6 I'm looking at right now. That is hands down.
That's going to be, so the temporary health decay is 20% slower. So yeah, what that makes me wonder is I think they're aware that temporary health is really strong, almost too strong for multiple reasons. So what this looks like to me is an introduction to messing with temporary health. Not only just this card, but then there's also bolstered health, which is further messing with temporary health. So what I am kind of anticipating here is if they're giving us opportunities to get more temporary health and opportunities to try to make our temporary health last longer, I also think they're going to be giving us opportunities to lose our temporary health a lot better. Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised if the value of this card could be a really big deal on, I don't know, maybe a toxic spill or maybe a biohazard, or who knows if they're going to add a different corruption card that messes with stuff. I really think temporary health is going to start having a magnifying glass over the top of it, and I'm really excited to see what they do about it.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of needs it, right? Like, the temp health is one of the strongest things in the game. And if they're going to add stuff that makes it even stronger, it would only make sense if they added some sort of counterplay, because there really isn't that much of a counterplay to temporary health right now. There isn't.
Well, we have to remember as well, like, the journey that temporary health has had, right? Like, at launch, where as long as you had 1 temp health, it would stop you taking trauma damage. Then they reverted that change, and it was almost unanimously disliked by a lot of the players, so they ended up putting it back. And they did mention when they put it back that we will still be addressing this later. This could be that patch that we see it get addressed in a way that they have, they've considered a bit more, maybe they're a bit more comfortable with, and they being Turtle Rock, of course. But it always comes back to, again, we can only assume, because we are recording this episode on the 6th, which is, I should be forgetting this. It's Wednesday right now, so I'd say just about a week before. For all we know, by the time this episode goes out, and in a kind of day or two's time, maybe they'll have an explanation and maybe more stuff on the Twitter. But as of right now, we can only go by what we assume it's going to be like. But this game has been patched a lot, and I think it's definitely safe to assume certain things where we definitely have an idea for the direction that Turtle Rock want to take this game. And I think making temp health straight up bad is not something the player base enjoys. There are too many, even on like the lower difficulties, there are a lot of melee users. There are a lot of people that like those healing decks, and even if it's something like knife quick melee plus melee kills give temp health, right? Like it's clearly a playstyle that a lot of the player base enjoy. And I think again, even if it is really strong, to change it in a way that it is extremely worse and maybe not even fun to play anymore is something that could just not really bode well with a lot of the player base. So I think even though I do see it getting nerfed, I don't think it's ever going to get to the point that it's like as bad as it was when they first nerfed it, because I don't think I've ever seen the player base so unhappy with a single change.
Oh, the pitchforks were out, man. I'll never forget that. Oh, it was so bad. They were so mad when they had that first change.
Well, it was also it was at the same time as Accidental Nightmare Plus, right? So it was kind of all of it at the same time, accidentally. But
speaking of Nightmare Plus,
right?
that's what I'm gonna dub No Hope. I'm gonna call it No Shot difficulty because it's gonna be too fucking hard.
All right,
and I think with temporary health. Oh, sorry, not to.
No problem.
I think on your point is it looks like it's going to be an expansion of the mechanic, not necessarily making it worse or better, but making it wider, giving it more breadth to do different things with it. Because that's exactly what we're seeing here is different things that affect temporary health. So I don't think it's going to be this is worse now or this is better now. I think there's going to be things that kind of play on both sides of it, and it just a lot more depth to experiment with things. And I think that's the thing I'm most excited about with the whole patch here is that everything that's already in the game is going to be changed because of everything that's being added to the game, and everything plays with each other. And I think that's one of the biggest things I'm excited about.
Now, there are 2 other cards here before we move on. There's Bravado and Magician's Apprentice. So to start off with Magician's Apprentice, you have an additional 10% chance to not consume accessories when used. I like the wording additional 10%. So I feel like these are the items. So accessories in general, it's basically thrown items, right? If we're going in with like Hang before, right? We mentioned Hang and his like passive chance to not use items or whatever. This could definitely be, again, depending on what else changes, this could be, if you really want to go for like the high value, high risk RNG elements, that could be quite interesting, but I don't know how viable I see it realistically.
I think it's going to be more of a niche card. I don't know. There's not really too much to say. It's pretty straightforward. I mean, it's 10% on top of whatever the rest of the percents or wherever sources is. So if the accessory is upgraded to the point where, it's 25% chance to not be used, then you add the 10%, now it's 35, and then you add Hang, and then it's another added percentage in there. So it could be really good. It might be situational to the point where maybe it's only good on maybe like No Hope difficulty where things are much more rare and you want to make sure that you can get the most chance to keep what you're using. But other than that, I don't see anything really. There's nothing really to it, honestly.
Now, Bravado. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Swing.
I just look at it from a number standpoint, right? So if you have 10%, that means 1 out of 10 items is going to get reused, and that could be different based on if it already has a reuse chance. But then if you add Hang in there, then it goes to 1 out of, 7.5 or something like that. So if you start looking at it from that way, I think that gives you a bit more of a concrete decision making on it rather than whether or not you feel lucky, right? So if you're a doc and the main items that you are using a lot of the time are defibs and medkits, you might get a little bit more value out of it if you're constantly procking on those. But if you're using something that, and just docs go through a lot of items anyway because they're always blowing through healing. It really just depends on if you're a high volume character or not. Is kind of
Yeah,
the way I look at it.
Which you
that's
tend to
why I
see a
called it
lot.
niche.
Yeah, which you do tend to see a lot with the money builds, right? Like if like one I see a lot is like copper plus medic, where you're the one that's generating all the money, but you're also spending more of it because you're obviously buying all the health items. And if the team's doing well, you're not needing to use them, so that's just seeing more value. Which that value is now going into taking off attachments that you can dish out the money for. And I think this is another way of just fitting a card like that into as many builds as possible that might see benefit, whether it's a grenadier, whether it's medic, whether it's again assuming that copper doesn't change in a big way, and is still as good or good enough to still be used. Could be interesting perhaps. But Bravado, the last one, when a teammate within 15 meters, 15 meters already quite generous, by the way. It's like that kind of
Mhm.
Overwatch distance already. When they receive trauma damage, you gain 10% of that amount as trauma health. That's interesting, considering.
That's a requirement. I'm
Yeah,
telling you right now, that's going to be a requirement on the higher difficulties because that's going to help manage everyone's trauma, and it kind of not really rewards, but it cushions the blow a little bit when someone makes a mistake or gets hit.
it kind of reminds me of the
Um,
role that Medic was playing in Original Nightmare, where
yeah,
Medic wasn't essential, but having one did let you make a lot more mistakes and be able to recover from them. Whether it was like, you get your lives back, whether everyone gets to live again because of defib or whatever it was. If we're assuming that there are going to be some temp health changes, having something to mitigate permanent damage, or trauma damage in general, is going to be so useful. Again, we assume what changes could happen, but assuming that temp health is something that is going to be weakened somewhat, I mean, this is going to be really useful. Absolutely.
yeah.
I don't know if I have the same take on that with this card because maybe I'm misreading it here, but so when a team within 15 meters gains trauma damage, 10% of that amount is healed, right? So let's say someone takes 10 trauma damage. That means you're going to be healed for 1 trauma damage, right?
Hmm.
And you can only take up to 60 unless you have more than 100 HP. So you're only ever going to get 60, or you're only ever going to get 6 trauma healed off of someone unless they keep rehealing their trauma. But how are they going to keep rehealing their trauma? I think this is a opportunity cost kind of thing where it's like I could pick Bravado, but I could pick Field Surgeon. Field Surgeon is going to make it so every time a medical accessory is used, there's 3 trauma healed. Or a different card that gives one, like was that medical expert or medical professional. Maybe you want to invest in or heck, even a economy card just to upgrade your support items. Like if this thing is capped, they're soft capped at 6 trauma damage. That just doesn't really feel like a lot to me. And not to
Hmm.
mention, that also means your teammates getting freaking destroyed if they're sitting there at 40,
Yeah.
uh, 40 health left anyway. Maybe it'll be really nice in a scenario where if you have a tank on the team and they go down because there might be a lot of in-cap trauma, maybe in-cap trauma has something to do with it. I'm not sure. But I feel like this thing kind of has a soft cap that makes it not as interesting to me as I'd like it to be.
Well, I think I might be misunderstanding the text in general. Do you heal the trauma health, or does the person that took the health heal the trauma health?
No, you heal it. It's whatever
Oh,
it heals
okay.
your trauma.
Oh, I thought it was a way of mitigating trauma damage that someone else was
Mm-mm.
taking. Okay, now that
No,
that, that does change it quite a bit. I mean,
I still think
again,
it's good.
I think it has potential. I guess to agree with Swing's point is I guess it depends on whether it's worth picking over a lot of other things that are also useful. The question is it going to be more useful than those in the same kind of situation? Whether you can squeeze it in potentially. I mean, I still think it sounds good. It's just a question of optimization, perhaps. Because I don't really
Yeah.
tend to play much medic anyway, so I'm kind of just reading this, and as someone that doesn't play a lot of medic, I'm just going, that sounds nice, but I don't really have the experience in game of playing it to know whether it is going to be as good as I think it sounds.
Yeah. I don't think I mean, I don't really play medic at all. What the reason why I'm thinking this card is going to be really good, it's kind of like, because we talked about we're recording this right now. It's April 6th. It's another 6 days until the actual DLC comes out. So there's going to be more information pouring out over the next few days. I'm curious as to what the change for trauma is going to be like on No Hope. And that's why I think this card might be good in the higher difficulties because we really don't know what to expect out of No Hope. And if there's crazy amounts of trauma damage being done to the point where every time you're taking trauma damage, someone else is healing, and that can kind of bounce off each other, I think there's a lot of use for that. But again, it's one of those things where we straight up just don't know. Like, we don't really know much about No Hope, but we're going to get into that, I'm sure. I think that's our next topic.
I was just about to say it's funny you should mention that, because
it's about that time. It's my favorite part of the show.
We might exactly be talking about that now, as I was planning on going into this discussion with a let's assume, right? Let's speculate what's going to be in No Hope. But Swing, being the information man that he is, uses a lot of Reddit and educated us on something that we didn't know existed. So we might have a bit more info on what No Hope is going to be like than we initially thought, because apparently a designer on Reddit has been quite open about what has been changing and what kind of things to expect. And of course, it is just on Reddit, so it could definitely be subject to change unless I see it in-game, like confirmed on social medias. I'm always going to take it with a pinch of salt. But Swing, do you want to run us through what we apparently should be expecting in No Hope, thanks to this Reddit
Oh my
post?
goodness, I don't have the thing up here. Let me go take a look.
While you find it, I think up front immediately, I'm just hoping that we get some of that genuine challenge back, because I don't want to sound like a broken record. I'm not going to go into detail because we said this on episode, the last episode we covered this a lot.
Agreed.
I definitely missed the hardest mode having that real punchy difficulty to it. I know obviously not everyone was willing to go into being as much of like a slamming your head into the wall until something works, like some of the original Nightmare levels were. I'm looking at you, Area 2, Act 2. It's the only level in the game that I refuse to remember its name, because I principle alone, I want to give it as little room in my brain as possible. The damn police station.
God, imagine that on No Hope. Fuck.
We won't have to imagine it much longer, my friend. Don't you worry. It's on
yes,
the way.
I will, because listen, when we're playing together and you queue up for Act 2, I'm gonna have internet connection issues because I'm not playing that shit.
And the problem is it's right at the beginning, so it's like, right, we're all raring to go. You get up to the second map and it's like, oh, whoops, gotta go. Didn't realize something's gone wrong. My PC's on fire.
Crazy. Yeah, my game crashed. Wow, and it accidentally uninstalled. I'll be back in 30.
Oh, but honestly, again, like, the reason I'm so excited about a new difficulty is, I don't want to be a broken record, but it's all about replay value. New difficulty means new reason to play every level, new reason to try every cleaner and every gun. And again, the deck variety is forever the most interesting part of the gameplay for me. And the deck variety being directly tied to what you can do on these big challenges has always been one of the funnest parts of the game to me.
Yeah. And before Swing gets into that, I do want to mention one thing. This is, we don't need to talk about this, but this is just something I'm really hoping for. It's not difficulty specific. I hope to God that they reset and change all of the sleeper spawns. I want them to completely just throw us for a loop. I was even saying, I kind of wish it was like something where the sleeper locations change every single game. So it's almost like that roguelite feel to it. So you don't know what spawn they're going to be in, because being able to tell when something could possibly be there, I feel like is a little, it's not bad, but like to give it really that roguelite experience of you never know what's going to happen or where you're going to come across. I would love to see.
I don't know if I agree, just because I remember how frustrated I was learning sleeper locations at launch, and when I didn't know where they could be, it would tilt me every map.
That's what I'm saying. Time. I want my teammates to get tilted. I want this to be a learning experience.
But I can also think of a good amount of places in game that sleepers should have no business spawning. And if they can now appear there, I'm gonna be like, I'm out. No, I'm alright.
Let me see one in the safe room for the one time. Just to troll the last person who's going to clutch it out. He gets hit by a sleeper in the safe room.
So on that note, they did change it not that long ago. There are new sleeper spawns than there were at launch. It was like
I noticed that,
Yeah, so like especially at the base of the ladder on 1-1, that's a really common one that people notice. And they talked about that. And sleeper locations are not set in stone, and they never were. They must just have places that they like being. My cat's on my desk. And they are subject to move around, and I'm sure that there's little things that they fuss with to make it so that it's a more opportune place for a sleeper to spawn.
Right.
And something I noticed, which I wouldn't be surprised if this crops up in No Hope, is I I actually went and I quick played on Recruit and Veteran on a stream to see what it was like. And what I noticed is on the run during Pain Train, it's not an endless horde, but there's a lot of sleepers where the final run is. Like when you're in the building, as you're going up the stairs, as you're getting close to the door, sleepers everywhere.
Oh,
So I wouldn't be surprised if you take the best of both worlds, where is sleepers everywhere. And let me tell you, Nightmare players don't know where those spawn because they play Nightmare all the time. So sleepers all over that building as you're making the run through an endless horde. I bet you that's going to be a fun learning experience right at the beginning of Act 1, where you gotta, there as D would like to have more sleepers where he doesn't know where they're going to be.
Oh, this game's gonna tilt me off the face of the earth. I
and a
can
finger
already
on the
see it.
monkey's paw curls.
Yeah.
Oh my god! I will say though, I do wonder how much of yeah, we'll get into the Reddit posts and the specifics very soon, but the real difference is like nerfed Nightmare feeling like the same game but just easier in just about every way, versus what it sounds like No Hope could be introducing, which is the whole game changes. Like it is basically like almost like the other difficulties are like the stepping stones to this, which is like a very definitive Back 4 Blood experience. That has me very interested. Are you ready to talk about it, Swing? Have you found the post?
I got it.
Ooh.
And just as you mentioned there, it's like it's not only is it harder, but it might be different. And they talk about that right away here. So he says it's hard to sum it all up, but there's quite a few changes. The biggest change is that players are going to start with their entire deck, so all 15 cards straight out the gate. Also, they added more random card shrines, which to me means it's going to kind of be more like a Binding of Isaac or Into the Gungeon kind of feel, where you can just keep finding items as you go, which I think is great.
Which, not to interrupt, but I always bring this up. Vermintide 2 Chaos Waste game mode has exactly that. There are just shrines that you can find, and it gives you a random buff, but whether you get to select from them. Basically, I have played something similar, and I really like it, so that's a good idea.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a lot of fun because, and I mean, who knows how if they're gonna normalize anything, or if it's just because copper is going to be a big perspective in No Hope as well, right? So are these things to be worth buying? It's going to be a real risk reward kind of thing. And then on that topic of a copper sink, if we feel like we have too much copper at the end of the game, having less copper piles or less valuable copper piles on top of the card shrines, I think it's going to really do a lot of interesting things for the economy. And then what he continues to say here is, which turned out to be really fun roguelike progression. And they also rescaled the Ridden power curve. So it's much easier to start the act, but it gets much harder towards the end, which is kind of the opposite of how it is right now.
Yeah.
Another thing they added was they got rid of the walkers, the joggers, and the runners. And they added a new type of common that are faster than sprinters. And who knows if they have other types of common, by the way. That could also
they 100% will. There's no doubt in my mind.
There will be acid ones on fire.
That explode. Don't forget that.
With the exploding heads.
Yes.
And then he said, in general, it feels more fair, which I've always wondered what fair means, but I think it's important that they're addressing that specifically, because that's something we heard a lot with older difficulties of Nightmare, where it was like, it doesn't even feel fair. So they took that in mind, the fairness side of it, but they said mistakes are punished pretty hard. So if you come into the deck, or if you come into the game mode with a bad deck and you don't play well as a team, it's going to be harder than old Nightmare was. But if you come in with solid teamwork and good decks, it's going to flow pretty well. So they're designing around that. And that's it.
Now, I guess that means I will not be touching quick play on No Hope. I need at least one other person as a pre-made before I go in there.
There is one thing that you mentioned that the second I heard it, my ears immediately like pricked up. You start with your entire deck on every level. That to me is like that plus extra card shrines. That's definitely got to be a source of where the easier early game will come in. Because again, if let's think of any generic deck, right? Let's say you're just doing generic gun damage and you've got a lot of weak spot damage, a lot of bullet damage, some reload speed, some mobility. Like, you are going to feel like a bit of a Superman right out the door, right? And that's it. It's just going to be a question of finding the right guns and whatever it is. But when you go to the specific builds, right, and you've got the copper build ready to go. The full medic, ready to go. The grenadier is one-shotting everything immediately, and bosses don't stand a chance. Or again, the damage resistance, right? You've got your melee users, your shotgun damage resist, your buckshot bruisers, and everyone is just completely locked and loaded from the get-go. I hear that, and I immediately think, is it actually going to be too easy? Because there are some decks that just don't feel fair. like you have them, you have the shell of it ready, and you're getting the the luxury cards, and you just feel like, I mean, how could I lose this level? But again, if it goes back into the general power creep of the enemies, they're meant to get harder as you go along. And it's like you said, Swing, right? At the moment, it's a bit of the opposite, where you feel the most vulnerable at the beginning, not because the enemies are harder, but because you don't have the equipment, right? You don't have the good guns, you haven't got your cards that you know you will need, but you don't have them yet, so you're kind of prioritizing the ones that you think you'll need early on. And let's say you get a corruption card that you're not ready for, and it's, oh crap, I really could have used this other card instead. All that's going to be gone. That's never going to happen again on this mode. But if it's still going to be a challenge, especially if we're putting in the Tunnels of Terror stuff on top of it, I'm really curious how they're still going to make it be a real solid challenge if every player is starting with the whole deck. Because to me, that's going to be difficult to achieve.
I think, okay, so the way how I'm seeing this, I'm actually the opposite. I think they understand, because they watch streams all the time. They know how crazy some of these decks we've come up with are. Not just us, but other content creators as well. You have to kind of put it into that perspective that, okay, you're getting your full deck, but you're not playing on current Nightmare. You're playing on a brand new difficulty where,
True.
because they're giving you this option to have your full deck, they know that things like Act 1 on Nightmare and Act 1 on No Hope are probably going to feel completely different. Now, maybe I'll eat my words, I don't know, but the way how I'm thinking right now is that because they know decks can be very strong, and they're not dumb. They know exactly how strong some of these decks are. They're very in tune with their community. They see it there. So if they're giving you the option to have your full deck, it's going to be tough. So if you have some deck that is just the most unoptimal piece of hot garbage out there,
Wooden
you're going to
armor.
be struggling. Okay, wait.
Sorry, I feel like I haven't mentioned wooden armor in months.
You know what? And I've been playing again recently, and everyone's like, "Oh, pick wooden armor. It's good now." I'm like, "Listen, you guys are fucking trolls. It's still bad. There's no reason to have it. Maybe in the future it'll be good." But the point that I'm trying to make is that, sure, it's going to feel a little bit easier, and you might get this false sense of security in the beginning of No Hope, where it's like, "Wow, this is really easy. I have my full deck. Everything's dying." And then you realize you're going to start feeling that power curve as the act goes on forward, and then you're gonna be like, "Wait, this is kind of fucked up."
Well,
And then you realize all the
also-
faults in your deck.
I also wonder if it's going to be like, because you start with your whole deck, is it not going to give you card selection at the end of every level, right? You're not going to get those free ammo or stamina.
Yeah, you're not
or
getting
5
anything.
health. I
Nothing.
imagine, yeah, it will just show you the corruption cards and that's it,
Yeah.
perhaps. Also, burn
Mhm.
cards. Like, are burn cards going to still be allowed on No Hope? Is that going to still be something to factor in?
think they are.
I think they will be. I kind of hope they're not, but it's not really that big of a deal whether they are or aren't, in my opinion, because you could choose not to use them. You don't have to use them if you don't want. But it'll be really weird if they implement that whole system with the burner cards, and they're like, "Oh, by the way, this new difficulty, we're just gonna void all that work we did on the game, and now you can't use it."
Maybe.
Just doesn't make
Right.
sense.
Potentially.
I think they're going to give an achievement. I think is what they said. I think they're working on an achievement for no burn cards for No Hope, and then no cards for No Hope.
Ooh.
Well, we know what we're doing.
So,
Damn, there's actually a reason to
yeah.
do it. Hell yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
now there's a dude. There better be some sort of skin you get from that. I swear to God, if there's not, I'm gonna lose it. Or at
I
least
think
a
it's,
title, something.
Right, title. I think it's exciting that they're designing it around having 15 cards. I mean, that
Yeah.
like from the very beginning phase, the whole point is that, one, this is harder, but two, it's harder even though you already have everything. So I agree completely that it's probably going to feel easier at the beginning because you're stacked. I don't know. I mean, there's so many different parts of the game that they can touch, and I think if we try to look at how they touch other difficulties, maybe that gives us a little bit of detail. But
Mhm.
something I think is going to happen right away is I think people are going to speedrun because they're going to be able to have 15 cards. So you're going to see how fast you can blaze through it. And I think that'll be a good way to really get a feel for what's being tossed at you. I think that'll be a smart way to navigate no hope when you first get into it. I also think that what we're going to see is scaling is going to be a lot different. Everything in
Yeah.
this game scales, or almost everything scales. So not just HP values, but it might also be stumble values. It might be damage. It might be speed. It might be objectives. There's a lot of objectives. I think on Recruit, you only got to do like 2 or 3 nodes, but on Nightmare, it's 4. And then on No Hope, it could be 5 or 6. Or
That's
like,
true.
let's say you're boarding up windows in,
Oh
what the hell
God,
is
the
that level called? The
church.
library. Or the church. Yeah. What if you have to board
Oh,
up more things? Or what if there's more howitzer shots? What if there's more ogres that spawn? What if at the end of Grave Danger you have 3 or 4 breakers, or you have to kill like 10 snitches? Like, there's so many places where this can expand. And then not only are you going to be dealing with chunkier stuff, most likely, you have to deal with a deeper objective. And then that's also another thing to be considering is you'll have to determine whether or not you want to go into the tunnels. And if you go into the tunnels, that might work out for you. It might not. And there's other things that could be going on too. Like there's areas that people have learned how to make them easy. So what if they make them not easy anymore? Like what if they fix some stuff with the swamp, or not the swamp, that area that you take the raft? What if that actually works and you can't just skip the whole raft mechanic?
yeah.
Like what if there's a bunch of different things that are all touched a little bit
What the
on
both
top
both
of?
corners of the diners are just like there's a fence there now. You can't sit in the corner.
Yeah, maybe they can make it so you have to sit there longer. They can make it so other things yeah, who knows?
All
Like
all they
there's
have to
Yeah.
do is make enemies spawn on that corner, like they jump over the walls, and that alone will make
Yeah.
it
Mhm.
less practical. But that's that. But that's again, it does all ultimately come back to the same point of we can only assume what we think will change based on what
Mm.
because our go-to point of comparison is going to be what we're playing right now, and it does sound like enough of the game is going to change. Like when I woke up this morning, I was thinking No Hope is just going to be a bit like Old Nightmare again, I suppose. Maybe burn cards wouldn't be allowed. Maybe more specials. Maybe they're healthier. Maybe they do more damage. But then now we're having a completely different discussion about, again, you start with your whole deck. The scaling of the enemies from start to finish is going to be entirely different. And this is different and that's different. And it's like, that's already more than I ever would have thought this morning.
Yeah.
So
I
who
mean, it's a brand
knows?
new experience. It literally sounds like a brand new experience. Now, the only I really want to make sure people that are listening to this understand something. I know there's going to be a lot of people that are like, oh, you start with your whole deck. It's just going to be too easy. You have to understand that No Hope is going to start out much harder than Nightmare starts out, and it's only going to go up. So it's like what Swing said. No Hope is designed around you starting with your whole deck. They have that in mind. So it may seem a little easy in the beginning. Maybe. We don't even know if it will. But we'll say maybe it'll be like you play through Act 1, right? Act dash 1 and 2 seem like a fucking breeze. Not a single person goes down, right? As you get into it later on, you're going to realize that it's not really that easy. And then on top of that, we always have that luxury. We get to pick certain cards for certain chapters, like let's say just out of example, wooden armor, right? Like now it's like trauma resistance, but now it's like minus 100% fire resistance, right? You're not going to pick that on Act 3, Chapter 2, where halfway through the level, Charred Ridden spawn, right? Now you don't get that luxury of picking and choosing when you get that. You know what I mean? So there's a lot more to it. And I don't want people to go in thinking, oh, they're just trying to make No Hope this glorified difficulty that isn't really going to be that difficult. I think you guys are going to be very mistaken. And on top of that, my only message to the devs, if this is hard, do not fucking touch it. Please. I am begging you, don't listen to anyone else that hasn't finished Veteran and they want No Hope to be nerfed. Please. That's all I ask. I don't care what else is done. If it's hard, just leave it the way it
But
is.
that in
That's it.
itself is another point on the discussion though, right? Is it comes back to, I think we mentioned this on maybe episode 1. I think it's okay for the game's hardest mode to always be hard.
Yes.
It's okay if you don't beat it every time. It's okay if you wipe every now and then, and maybe you only beat it 1 in every 3 or 4 goes. I think games like this, they need that kind of real last hurdle to always be something that you're going to have some difficulty with, just for the sake of having a reason to play it, you know. And if you are one of those players that's just a god and you beat it every time, it can be on you to make it a challenge, right? Do you go for solo?
Mhm.
Do you go for true solo and it's just you and no bots? Do you go for like secondary weapons only? Like, make it so if you do have those players that beat it every time because they are just good enough to do that, they're probably gonna be good at it no matter what you do to the game mode. So just like leave it hard, you know,
Yeah.
leave it at that point. It's okay to not beat it every time, you know,
Yeah.
because again, it's whether it's like Cataclysm and Vermintide, whether it's like Expert Realism and Left 4 Dead, like sometimes getting wiped out and going for it again and giving it another go, it's part of the experience, you know. It's that kind of reason to keep playing. You get up to a point, it's like, oh, we definitely could have done that, let's give it another go, and then you breeze through getting back up to where you were, and maybe it's a bit easier. Like, I think it's an important dynamic for this kind of game to have, and I hope that this game mode achieves that and stays that way.
Mhm.
I think this is a great opportunity for No Hope too, because expectations, I think, are a little bit different. I think game launches, you see 3 difficulty modes, you think easy, normal, hard, and you play a lot of games. I can play hard mode, not a big deal. It didn't turn out that way. It was much harder than a typical hard nowadays. So people, I think, measured themselves off of their capacity to play Nightmare well, and that would make some folks upset. And then also there was the trophy of the SWAT at the end of it. No Hope is coming in with a completely different set of expectations. It's been a few months, it's been 6 months. People have had a lot of time to learn. People are really good at the game now. It's not like when we were getting destroyed in November and the game was only out for like a month. Like um, I actually looked at old November footage and I was like, oh man, was it really that hard? It really wasn't. We were just not as good.
We just
But
weren't
now
good.
it's like, yeah, so now we have 6 months under our belts and people are expecting it to be hard. It's not
Mhm.
going to be catching anybody off guard. And I think that's going to be, again, this whole theme of it's a new experience. And then so many things are changing, like the 15 cards, and the 15 cards, like that goes so deep because it's not only having 15 cards, it's cards that you like, but you never really pick because you'd rather pick something else in front of it. Like, I think of Fresh Bandage every time I think of this. Like, Fresh Bandage is an amazing card, but I always just want to pick something else instead. But if I had it right away, oh, it's going to be awesome for me the entire time. Or now you also start thinking of it from a 1 out of 60 cards perspective, right? Because you have 4 people on your team and we're going to have 60 cards to fight with right away, rather than, I don't know, what do you have, 8 between the 4 of you on 1-1.
Yeah, I think
So
so.
it's a totally different way to engage with the game.
Mhm.
And again, expectations matter a lot, and people are expecting it to be. You know, they've had streamers they can watch for the past 6 months, and they want them to suffer. So, like, people are just going to be looking for something hard now, where before I think it caught people off guard.
Please just shatter my ego with this difficulty. I'm all for it, man. Like I'm not asking for much. I just want you to make me hate the game but not be able to put it down. It's a pretty simple concept as far as I'm concerned, but I'm excited for it. Like we mentioned before we went live, you know, we were just talking a little bit, and I was like, yeah, we don't really know virtually anything about No Hope, and then you showed us the Reddit post, which is available for everyone. I mean, you all can go see it for yourself.
Oh
But
yeah,
like,
I want to say outright, this isn't like a leak or a scoop. It's just a Reddit
no,
post. We're
no.
not leaking anything. We're not throwing anyone under the bus. Like, just
No,
complete transparency
it's
on that. It's public.
literal public information that you can go see right now. And honestly, I don't know if you're going to put like the link to it in the description, but I guess it's very easy to find regardless. The point that I'm trying to make is that now that we have some little tidbits, because like it's kind of good to put things into perspective. Because if all I heard about No Hope today was you start out with your full deck, I'd be like, what the fuck? But now there's like so much more to it. And then we didn't even talk about there's like, I guess, disarming certain traps, but if someone disarming it or disarming a security door is doing it, I guess it's like kind of a slow process. But if they take any source of damage, the alarm goes off. And I'm like, that is so cool. But there's also a serious drawback if you don't protect that man. And then we joked around like, you know, there's always bugs and shit. You were gone for this, Jake, but I joked around like, oh, this guy starts disarming a security door, but then the periodic damage of the toxic corruption card just sets off the alarm anyway.
Oh my god. Or
Can
friendly
you
fire.
imagine?
No,
Friendly
that's
fire,
the
yeah.
kind of thing I would do to catch up. Is like he's disarming a door and I just shoot him in the ass. And then the alarm goes off. I'm like, Ryan, why'd you mess up the door? And then
It's like, I didn't shoot you. Everyone looks at each other.
well, there's
Meanwhile, you're all getting
I
pounded.
think the real thing that has me the most curious about the starting with 15 cards thing, though, and again, not to stay on this point, I'll move on eventually elsewhere, but there are some acts that it feels like you don't even finish your deck by the end of it, you know?
Correct.
Where and if you do, you barely finish it. So you have this whole deck in mind, and I mean, how many times have you looked at a deck, right, and you've just looked at the list of cards you've got, and it's like, man, this is really good. All these together would be really fun to use. But when you think about it, you only really get to use it as you imagine for like 20% of the campaign, because you get all your important ones first, and you get, you know, it's like I've always said, you get your shell first. You get the important cards that the deck doesn't work without those cards. You get them where you need them. Maybe you have them in a set order, so you know you have them for the right chapters and stuff like that. And eventually the goal is, you know, build together this really cool deck, and now you've got this cool way of playing, and it's really fun. But then you end up using the funnest version of the complete deck for almost none of the campaign. If this is a way of getting, again, you experience the whole deck from area 1, you get that whole experience immediately compared to getting it so few before. That, even if it does make it easier, I think it's going to be funner because of that. You know, actually being able to use the whole deck together and creating this whole play style and being able to use it for the whole time. Like, that really interests me, especially as someone that I tend to be a bit of a hipster and try and think outside the box a bit and do my own thing a lot. And I've got some decks that I would love, love, love to be able to use immediately from the get-go. But then I use them in a map, and it's just not the same because you're just not using it for enough of the campaign.
Right.
I think, to your point as well, one thing I would assume that people are going to feel a little apprehensive about is the progression's not there anymore. Well, if you have everything right away, what am I gaining? I think that that's a sub point that they talked about, where there's going to be a lot more card shrines available now. So you're going to be able to experience this whole new way to play the game with the 15 cards, but you're still also going to be having a path of progression, not only due to these new items that we're going to be experiencing, but there's going to be all these card shrines. So you kind of get in the best of both worlds at this point. You get the random feeling, but it's still progression, but then you also get a lot more control over what your character is going to be like. Like, it's a new thing. It's not just harder, it's new.
Not to mention, you're also going to be still needing to upgrade the quality of your items. You're still going to need to
Right.
find better quality weapons as you go through, right? You're still going to start with common guns, assuming. You're still going to have, like, gray grenades and stuff like that. And you're still going to need someone on Copper to help get those buffs, or, you know, you just have to play well as a team to still get them, because, you know, you can have all the cards in the world. If you get up to the diner with gray barbed wire, you're probably still going to suffer. You're still going to want to make sure you're playing smart and thinking ahead. And honestly, yeah, I think it sounds like a step in the very right direction. It's just a question of whether that is exactly how it's going to go. But as we do approach, I think we've been about an hour and 10 minutes at this point. I think that does kind of cover everything to do with the patch, at least with what we know right now. Is there anything that we missed, do you think? Anything pop to mind?
Not really. No. I mean, we kind of went through everything. Again, we say it again, it's being recorded on the 6th. So this is just, we're talking about the information that is available at this current time. We have no idea what else they're going to be sharing over the next few days. So I mean, honestly, I think we did a good job just kind of like covering some stuff and kind of like digging deep into what to really expect. And then there's probably still going to be a ton of surprises between now and April 12th.
I know there's one card that people are going to be really asking about, because they've been asking about it for months at this point, or maybe a month, and they talked about it. So they're probably going to talk about it later this week. It was Stealthy Passage. And we alluded to it.
Yes.
So Stealthy Passage is the card.
Yes.
Yeah. The alarm door problem, right? So this is the card that has been finally talked about, that people have been wanting. So Stealthy Passage is going to allow people to disable birds. Apparently they'll explode if you disable them. You can
Oh no.
you can disable door alarms and car alarms. This is a card that's going to let you do all three of these. However, if the player is damaged during the disarm period, the hazard is going to trigger, so you'll get your horde. And this is actually kind of an economy card, because if you successfully disarm it, everybody on the team is going to gain 25 copper. So this is this card that didn't make it in, or something with the alarm doors, that everything was out of sync. This is what they intended. And The way I see it is it's going to be, I don't know, 5-6 seconds for you to disarm this thing. And if you take
Hmm.
damage from anything, like a ridden smack, a retch, a stinger, I don't know,
Friendly
somebody shoots
fire.
you.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Friendly fire, wouldn't that be a shame if someone did that?
Oh, what a shame that would be. Also, we need to point out, and this is confirmed on Reddit, use speed will not affect this process. There is
Which I
no
think is
way to
good.
speed this up.
Because
There's
it's going to
a
be tension,
yeah.
right? Like as it's happening. Like if you had 300% use speed, you go, whoop, there goes the door. Like I think that would lose a lot of its luster. I like
Mhm.
that it's going to be, okay, guys, I'm doing the door, and everybody's got to watch them. If it would go away with use speed. So I think it's good that it doesn't get affected.
Agreed.
I like the way that they've done this because I remember when the patch initially changed the doors. So again, to kind of go back, I think this was done after episode 2, so we wouldn't have covered this on the podcast. But there was a
Mhm.
patch, the most recent patch that added some cards, changed some around. It changed how alarm doors worked. That basically only special ridden could break down alarm doors. Commons no longer break through them. So you find
Mhm.
yourself having to open alarm doors either using toolkits or you just accept the fact that you're going to set off the horde and just go through. And they did say at the time that this is in the game at the moment, but the card that we are designing to go alongside this alarm door change isn't in the game yet. It's going to come out and then it will all make sense. And this is that card they're talking about. I like this being the direction they've gone with it because having to like go through alarm doors and just having to set off the alarm feels a little bit clumsy. I quite enjoyed having to like play around commons and trying to kind of kite them round to break things. This is a way of still getting that strategic gameplay with it not being
Mhm.
completely free, but at the same time, let's say it takes 5 seconds to disarm anything. That sounds like a long time, but there are a lot of instances where you find yourself having that's more than enough time to safely disarm something. I think the threat is if you're doing it in like a more dangerous situation. But if it's a more dangerous situation and there's like birds, you could probably still get rid of them with a flashbang or grenades, or you could
Mhm.
probably still toolkit doors if you want to just do them immediately. It sounds like a really nice optional way of going about it where, again, if we're talking no hope and you start with 60 cards amongst 4 players, I think it's safe to say you can probably fit this in on one of the players. But at the same time, if you want to just do it traditionally and just go for, again, just get rid of birds instantly with grenades or use toolkits on doors, like you still can do that. It's completely optional, but should
Yeah.
you want to do it, sounds like an interesting dynamic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, giving you the option to do that, and then if it's successful, you get copper. I
Yeah.
think it's going to be that's a good risk reward. Honestly, as long as you guys can work together. Otherwise, you're just
Mhm.
going to be setting off horde after horde, and
No, so
that's not going to be
accidentally
fun
shoot
for
your mate
everybody.
in the ass.
Yeah, accidentally.
I'm assuming that
Accidentally.
once you're doing the accident, I'm assuming when you have the 5 seconds going too, you can't back out, right? Like you're locked in.
Or if you did
And
try
if
and
you try,
back out, the alarm goes off. That'd be pretty funny because I'd be like,
right?
That
Yeah.
should be it.
yeah,
Honestly,
that
Yeah,
does
that's
sound like the balanced way of doing it. Like
yeah,
once you start, you better finish, otherwise.
yeah. Because then if someone jumps the gun and starts doing it before everyone else can get into position, or if there's still zombies that are around, or whatever the case may be, they fucked up and they're going to take damage. And then if you cancel it, you're going to alert it anyway. So you have to pretty much be smart with your timing. I think it's a really cool mechanic. I really like that.
So, as I do believe that pretty much does conclude the new patch stuff that we know at the
Mhm.
moment. Obviously, whether that would change over the next few days, we will see. And of course, all of us here, we're going to be covering the game a lot on Twitch, particularly as and when this comes out. So, of course, it's twitch.tv/SwingPoynt/I'm Big D and PNDK&M to watch it for day one and beyond, no doubt. But as we do kind of get towards the end of this podcast, towards the later portion, I have a question this time that I want to put to the both of you that's kind of Back 4 Blood related.
Okay.
But we all play a lot of games. I'm sure, Swing, you are probably sick to death of me mentioning this game, Resident Evil Resistance, which I feel like I've brought up in your chat like 20 times from the launch of Back 4 Blood to now. But my point
It's
is,
so
we've
funny.
all played a lot of games. We've all played a lot of horror games, particularly. And as we're seeing new content, right, new weapons, cleaners, and all that, I want to propose a question to both of you. If you need time to think about it, no problem. It's pretty interesting. You can take any character from any horror-themed game. It doesn't have to be a survival horror. Any horror-esque game. Put them in this game as a cleaner. What do they do? What is their game plan?
Mm.
Think Dead by Daylight style crossover guests.
Yeah.
I
You
would.
can't just
I can just dump it on because that's it's the
no.
point.
Listen. the way how these podcasts work, we have a basic rough outline, and we're like, all right, we're just gonna flow into it. I mean, me and Swing both, we had no idea Mustard had this question like at the ready.
Got to think on your feet.
Any cleaner from any game?
I would like.
You got me thinking about Resistance now, so that's just where my brain's gonna go. That's gonna be where my
And
answers.
there's in the back, you just hear the melancholy of what could have been.
I
Which I feel like
mean,
I've
at
gone
least
off
he
on
didn't
this,
say.
no, I've gone off on this like Resident Evil Resistance tangent on this podcast before, so
At least he
I'm not
didn't
just
say
gonna.
Resident Evil Reverse.
No, oh wait, is that game still coming out?
I
You mean
guess
the
so.
26th anniversary game that's maybe gonna come out now?
Yeah,
Instead
I
of the
mean,
25th?
welcome to Raccoon City Part 2. I'm ready, dude.
I'm at the point that genuinely like, and I feel bad because I like the Neobards team. I genuinely really enjoyed Resistance. The way I learned Resistance was watching Swing's videos on it, legitimately. Like, so I was like, oh, this game looks pretty good. Some friends of mine were like, oh, you'd probably like this. I tried it, and I didn't know what I was doing, but it was fun. And then me being me, a bit of a tryhard, I YouTubed like how to play the game properly. And I found Swing's channel, and I was like, "This game is sick," because I hadn't considered
It's
any
so
of it.
fun, yeah.
I hadn't considered any of that stuff. But at this point, the greatest gift Reverse could give us is to be cancelled and Resistance comes back. That's what I want.
Ooh.
Never gonna happen though. Never gonna happen.
No, they're definitely.
Again, I have to stop myself because I've been on this tangent before. I will not go through the depths again.
I'm pretty sure
Do you wanna
Swing's
know how
eye
much-
is twitching.
Do you want to know how much they hate Resistance? They're remastering Resident Evil 3, Resident Evil 2 on console and stuff like that, and giving them a visual upgrade. And they made a point to say, we're doing this game, including Resident Evil 3, which is bundled with Resident Evil Resistance, but we're not doing it to Resistance. Sorry.
So they're just leaving it. It's like, it is what it
Put
is.
the nail in the coffin. They're like, yeah, we're gonna remaster all of these, but that extra thing that we still don't want to talk. No, it's not happening. Sorry,
It
Resistance.
never happened. They don't even. I don't think they even want to acknowledge its
I don't
existence
know
anymore.
why.
But
It had
that's-
so good.
Yeah, that's what I don't understand because Resident Evil does not have a great track record of PvP, and they finally had a game come out that was like not made by them. It was made by another team. That's probably why it was good because they had that outside the box thinking. They
Right.
gave it like less than 6 months of dev time, and they were like, right, that's it, Reverse time, new game.
Yeah, I can't wait for Reverse. But I will tell you, that tangent gave me enough time to think about it.
See, I told
I'm
you, man.
honestly-
I told you.
I'm gonna give my clean. Now it can't be like something evil, right? Like it can't. It's got to be like an actual person.
I mean,
Right.
at this point, I would take anything.
I'm gonna take the normie approach. I'm gonna say throw in Resident Evil Village's Chris Redfield as a cleaner. That's what I would go for.
You needed
Yeah,
5 minutes to think
we-
of that.
Okay, first of all, don't talk to me like that. Second of all, I wanted to put in something different, but I couldn't think. I mean, I'm not gonna put in like
What are his stats?
like
He gets
Pyramid Head and give him a
5%
fucking
gun
weapon.
damage, 10% benefit.
Okay,
to,
it's not as vanilla as you're making it out to be. Okay, I was
Hey,
thinking
hey,
maybe he
D's-
could call in like an airstrike or something. I don't know. Remember the last
In
part
D's
of Village?
defense, they're like, we have tall boys in Back for Blood, and in Resident Evil, they're pretty good at dealing with tall ladies. So it makes
See?
sense. Yeah,
See?
they would be a good cleaner.
Yeah, shame on you, Mustard.
He says he gets a massive punch once every 2 minutes.
Hey, it's kind of like the Doom Eternal. You know the what was that called? Fuck,
A gore punch.
It's something like that. Yeah,
Ryan is
the glory
Ryan,
kill punch
yeah,
or whatever.
Ryan will kill me for forgetting. I would like to have James Sunderland from Silent Hill 2 with a super-powered flashlight and a radio. So the radio buzzes before a horde spawns, so you have even more notice that it's on the way. And his flashlight is just like blinds and stuns things really easily.
Wait, fuck! I'm taking it back. Ash Williams.
He's
Ash
getting his own
Williams.
game.
He is.
I know. I can't wait for that. I actually
Oh,
cannot
dude.
wait for that.
That's your next big game. Guarantee it. Evil
I
Dead
am so excited.
game coming out in May. Check it out.
Wait, it's out next month?
Yep.
Oh my god, yeah.
Unless
yeah,
it gets
next
delayed
month.
again. But
Jesus.
it was supposed to be
It
out
has
in
a release date.
February.
It's
It's
made
supposed to be
by
out in
Saber
February.
Interactive. Same
Mhm.
folks that did World War Z. So it's going to be polished.
Wait, really?
Ooh.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
World War Z was
Oh, it
very
looks
good.
real good.
Yeah.
Somebody streamed it when they weren't supposed to, and it looked really good.
Well,
Watched it before it got
I
taken
thank
down.
them for falling on the sword, taking
Yeah.
one for the team.
The martyr that
Yeah.
we needed.
They
Oh,
got
that-
Twitch banned. I felt bad.
I mean, it's one of those things that like I'm not happy it happened, but at the end of the day, you play with fire. Like I don't know, man. Like it sucks, but come on now. You can't be doing that. If you do it by accident, it is what it is. Everyone makes mistakes. But if you know you shouldn't and you still do it, it's like, I don't know what to do for you, man. It is what it is. That's a whole genre of games that I've always missed out on. Like I played Dead by Daylight the smallest amount, and that whole kind of like isometric 4v1. The only game I played in that style the most was either Resistance or Evolve. They're the only two games that I played a lot in that kind
I love Evolve.
Evolve was so good.
So good.
Really, really, really
Ahead of
fun.
its time.
I agree. I think if that game came out more polished and in a better way, it could have been it could have caught the Dead by Daylight crowd in the same way that Dead by Daylight did, in my opinion. But obviously, yeah, that's another story.
You got me thinking about Resistance characters. I'm going to pick one for Back 4 Blood. Going personality wise, oh man, who had the best personality? I mean, it's really hard to ignore Valerie. So I'm leaning Valerie with her healing over here. But since we already have Doc, and Doc kind of hits that funny healer perspective, I do think Sam would be a really good pick too, because he was just such a stupid meathead that just said the dumbest stuff all the time. And I think that would be a really fun thing to have in back, because it's not really a super dumb character. Like, I guess Evangelo was kind of airheaded, but Sam in Resistance was just like unsavable kind of dumb. And I love that about him.
That's my new name right there.
I'd love to see him in his voice lines inside of Back 4 Blood.
I think that was one of the cooler things about the way the characters were designed in Resistance is they managed to take like the horror movie stereotype trope characters and make them believable Resident Evil characters. But I think that would work, right? Just having that proper, like, really just dense, like, varsity jacket wearing, blue jeans wearing. Like,
dude, it's like what I said last podcast, man. You remember all of Hoffman's lines? He talks about like Brent from school. He's like, "Oh, that's why I went to the range, Brent." I want Brent to be alive. He like went to a party right before the collapse. He passed out drunk in a bunker, and he woke up and somehow survived. I want some stupid like high school dropout cleaner, and I want to have Hoffman and that cleaner just go back and forth with each other. So I don't know anything about Resistance, but this Sam character, I'm all in. Easy.
Sam's amazing.
Hell yeah.
I got a theory for you. Yeah, we got time here.
Yeah, of course.
So one of the things that I guess I'm thinking about, we didn't even talk about, there's going to be new skins. They showed them already, some of them, on the cleaners. And one of which
the hazmat suits.
No, not even just.
Well, I mean, there's others too. Yeah, it's not just hazmat.
Yeah.
Oh.
So there's like Rambo Walker. There's Biker Mom. There's Accountant Hoffman. I don't know. It was like the Purge Holly. That's what we saw. And here's my theory. So Hoffman was an accountant beforehand, right? Before all this happened. Heng is a restaurant owner. I think Heng is Hoffman's dad. And I think they had a business where Heng had restaurants open, but they're really just fronts, and that those two were loaded, and that Hoffman was his accountant for the front business that he had, and they're actually doing like shady things under the table. That's my headcanon now.
Yeah, but
it's
if
like
that's the case,
Bad.
Hoffman probably didn't know about it, right? Because there's no way he would willingly do.
Hoffman's the kind of guy. You know the episode of The Simpsons where Marge eats a grape and Lisa makes her tell the cashier so they don't get arrested. That's Hoffman.
That's Hoffman. Yeah, I knew it.
He's always talking about his dad.
He's the kind of guy that would take free samples in the supermarket and apologize.
He would go back for a second one and then have to apologize, like try to give them money for it.
I mean, that would be cool though, because that is like there's a lot of layers to it. So obviously, when it comes to like the character narrative and dialogue, they have to keep it relatively vague because you don't know what combination of cleaners are going to be playing, and obviously, you know, they can't be using any names or whatever it is. But one thing that's pretty much unanimous is whenever Hoffman talks about his dad, pretty much every other cleaner says the TLDR, your dad sounds like a dickhead.
Yeah.
So if now his dad is like playable alongside them, I wonder if they'll kind of like keep that.
That'd be so fun.
Yeah, that kind of like, what's the word that there's a word. It's a professional commentator, by the way. It's completely left my brain. Reluctance to be nice to him.
Being a dick.
Yeah.
essentially.
That works. That'll do.
You know what the funny? I know we're pretty much done here. We didn't even touch on what the new Ridden are.
Oh my god, we
The
didn't.
Ripper, the Shredder, and
so
the
much.
Urchin. We have no.
There's
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Oh
And you know
yeah.
what? That's good. That's good that we forgot to cover
All
it
this
because that just
hives, all the
shows.
hives is right
Yeah,
here
that's
on the
what I'm
ground. Oh
saying.
my god, we didn't cover
That's what I'm
everything.
saying. We didn't
Oh.
cover everything. So you know what?
It's
It's
such a
almost
big
good that we
patch.
didn't. It's good. It shows how huge this is going to be and how much is going to overhaul the game. We don't even have to get into the Ridden. We could all talk about that in the next episode after the patch comes out. Talk about how fucking annoying the Ripper probably is, or whatever the case is.
I
I
think.
bet you he rips farts.
Oh god,
Please don't. They all have like the spikes on them. It's weird.
it will be. That's actually pretty cool though.
Interesting.
They're like going to that kind of like doomsday punk look. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll talk about the new Ridden right now. The patch is giving new Ridden. There you go. Done.
There it is.
Covered. Can't say we didn't cover
Covered.
it. There's
That's
also
big,
a new game mode called Ridden Hives. Done. Can't
That's
say I
it.
didn't. But
No, we've covered everything.
well, as much as in all seriousness though, we don't really have any information what they're going to be beyond the name of them.
No.
So I think for now we covered everything that we have a bit more info on. So I think if there were things to miss out, they were probably the lower impact things to miss out.
Right. We
And,
covered the main points.
Yeah. Also, we are planning on doing another episode closer to after the patch is out, so it's not going to be another 2 months until the next episode.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say what, 2 weeks? You think 2.5 weeks
Yeah.
after we get our hands on the patch for that long?
I'd say so.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and that should be really cool. On that note,
Cool.
is there anything else anyone wants to talk about, or is that going to be it for us?
I'm good on my end.
I'm
Swing,
good.
you got anything?
I think I'm good.
All right. Well,
Okay.
before we do call it a day, as always, I do want to thank Big D for joining me on this, and especially to Swing, because Swing, I
Thank
know you. I said it at the start, and I'll say it at the end. You are hands down the most requested guest on the show.
Mhm.
So thank you very much for setting some time aside and joining us. Where can the viewers at home find you online?
You can find me on Twitch. You can find me on YouTube. SWINGPOYNT. I stream just about every single night and do YouTube videos as I get them out. Probably going to be a lot of them around April 12th due to the patches coming out. So those are the main places to find me. And I'm also on pretty much everywhere else, social media wise, if you want to look me up.
Hell yeah. Well, then that should just about do it. So thank you so much to both of you for joining me. Thank you watching at home, as always, for your time. I hope you've enjoyed this kind of hour and a half sit down, as Back 4 Blood is about to get busted wide open in less than a week's time now. So by the time this video goes up, about maybe a couple days, there'll be even less to wait. So Back 4 Blood fever is definitely upon us once again.
Yes.
But yeah, that's going to be it from us. Thank you so much for watching. This has been Cleaner's Corner, Episode 3. Much love. Thank you very much. Take care. Good night. See you next time.
Thank you.